Welcome, everybody, to the August 19th Curriculum Committee meeting. It's good to be with you. I acknowledge that all members of the committee are here, myself, Mickey Bondo, and Roberto Rodriguez. And the purpose of tonight's meeting is to do some table setting, I will call it, to prepare ourselves for the work ahead this fall. And I will turn it over to Malia to take us in.
Awesome. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So I'm going to share my screen. So I'll just use this to kind of step us through the agenda, Adam, if that sounds okay to you. And so like Adam said, a kind of a basic table setting meeting this evening. So our goals are to essentially land our meeting dates through December, review the priorities that Adam and I drafted together this summer. Mickey and Roberto, just getting your feedback on those to make sure they feel like the right things for us to be working on through 2021. And then some space to just look again at the priority work of the teaching and learning continuum this year, to make sure that y'all have visibility into that work, since we can't talk about all of it between now and December. So we wanted to create some space to make sure that was transparent and to give you opportunities to ask about things that you're maybe interested in but aren't showing up on our agendas, just to make sure that we have opportunity for that kind of communication. So that's what we're trying to do. Anything you would add to that, Adam?
No, I'll just note that before the close of the meeting, we'll have to attend to the approval of minutes, which I skipped over, but we'll just save that for the end, if that's all right.
Okay, great. I'm getting a little bit of a background, but it looks like everybody else is muted. It's really weird. Okay. All right. So I'll kind of start, Adam, here by sharing what you and I talked about, and then by all means chime in. But Mickey and Roberto, just to kind of share with you. So Adam and I met in August, and we looked back at the notes we had taken at the beginning of last year for what's everything we were hoping to accomplish in the cycle of this committee, and then what's coming up with the work this fall. And so our draft proposal to you two, which of course is open to feedback, is here. So this meeting is really just getting aligned on the same page, setting up our dates. September, we thought we'd pick back up the AP policy. This is work that was done, I've got to check myself, it was either 2 or 3 years ago. We got all the way to drafting new language, but there was some concern and pushback from Portland High in particular. So we paused that work and didn't actually advance it to the stage of adopting the policy. So we wanted to revisit that and hopefully move the policy revision forward this fall. In October, we thought we'd do a deep dive into pre-K and look at where we are in terms of the resolution, and talk a little bit about how what we're doing to improve the lottery process, sort of the opportunities and challenges with expansion, as well as before and after care. In November, we thought we'd look kind of broadly across the curriculum and what we think of as our first priority, which is our achievement equity priority. And we're calling kind of strengthening tier 1 instruction, which is your core instruction. And so here we'd be looking at our instructional visions and getting updates around how things are going with the rollout of the first units of Wabanaki studies, the problem-based math pedagogy, some of our literacy work, outdoor learning integration, etc. And then December, we weren't sure yet. We wanted to leave a little bit of flex based on things that come up, things that we don't feel like we have sufficient time for. It's probably also an opportunity to start to tee up budget-related issues. So given where we are, what's surfacing in terms of the resources we have and need to continue to advance the teaching and learning work. So so that's kind of what we had thought about, and really appreciate Adam for kind of organizing us in this way so that we have kind of a long-term plan, if you will, and know what to expect. But would love, Adam, for you to chime in on anything I missed, and then Mickey and Roberto, any kind of questions or feedback. so that we can land this. And then that helps me to kind of get the right people at the meetings and, plan for what we're going to be talking about, et cetera. So I'll pause there.
Thanks, Malia. I'll just say I also appreciate our approach here, and thank you for being a good partner in setting this up and heading this direction. Really curious to hear Mickey and Roberto's thoughts.
All right. Thank you, Adam. Let me jump in. Yeah, I really like the proposal because the AP policy was something that was on my mind a couple of years ago when we had the previous board on the curriculum committee, because I know we have two different policy from during high school and from Portland High School. So I think going to the AP policy to make a one for, for all the districts. So students, they can use this opportunity because there's a lot of gap in that area. So I'm really pleased with the September AP policy, October. So everything is fine. Just in November, I tried to see all the progress for the decolonizing curriculum. That word mess me all the time. But the thing is, I'm wondering about the African studies, where we are with that.
Great question, Mickey. I think I would put that into November. So what we've done after last year and working with a group of advisors from the community is we've narrowed the scope, and so our focus is going to be on local Black history, because we realized, like, oh my gosh, what are we doing trying to take on all of Africana studies? It was just a gigantic task. Our Wabanaki studies work is not all of Indigenous studies. It's looking really deeply at Wabanaki studies here in our community. So not to say that we aren't looking at this local Black history fitting in a larger context of evolving our social studies work, but the focus from designing the units that we're trying to get then implemented consistently pre-K through 12, we have a better focus now in terms of the local Black history. And so that's the work of this year, will be to really finalize the scope and sequence, and then to start to write the units for that. And we could totally talk about that in November. That would be part of that update.
Yeah, I like the approach too, because that's what I was thinking when I look at the Africana curriculum in a broad space. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of confusing, because when I try to compare the European-centric than we are having in our curriculum for years, now when we open up to the Afrocentric, that means it's going to be, and I like the approach then we're bringing to have the local Black history local first, before we may bring that one to the more larger aspect of the engagement, involvement of the Africana curriculum. And I think the Africana studies, and I think getting the focus on the local here is going to make more sense. People will start getting the right stories about what really happening, and look at the large Black humanism a little more broader after that. Because on the other side, wrong is going to be a bigger confusing, because if you start with the broader one and coming a little down to confusing, people getting a little messed up with the Afrocentric curriculum right there. But I think that's the best approach. I like it.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that came straight from the work with the advisory meetings we had, which were all with local Black leaders, both educators within our system and leaders in the community broadly. So that's great to hear that resonates with you, Mickey.
Exactly. Thank you.
I can go. I literally just parked, so I'm glad that that Mickey was able. I don't know if Mickey, are you done with your questions or with your comments? Okay, great. So hi, Malia. I haven't seen you in a while.
I know. Hi.
Good to see you. Yeah. So I like a couple of things that I really like is the timing of this. So to start thinking this far ahead now in August, after the break is a really good place to kind of reset and get back into the work. So I really like that. I don't think I've seen this before. So again, that's a good thing. Another thing that I like a lot is that there isn't a lot of new material here. There's a lot of emphasis in going back and checking back into what we've already started, trying to ask for the committee's input again. And that's really important because often we get bogged down by adding new work. And then the board loses track of what we've initiated. And I'm sure staff then also feels overburdened because, you don't get to carry one thing forward before the next thing gets thrown at you. So, and another layer to that is that given that we will have some board turnover, I think just recapping, solidifying the organizational, or rather the institutional knowledge that the current board members have is really, really important. So I like that part of it a lot. I was going to ask about the AP policy because I wasn't familiar with the history of it, like that it had come up before. And the two questions that I had around that was just the history of that and how come it's coming through curriculum. I totally get why, but instead of the policy committee. Yeah. I understand why, because AP, but it's worth asking and explaining because it is a policy.
Yeah. Can I speak to both those? Is that right? Okay. So when we do AP policy, presuming you all ultimately approve this plan that Adam and I drafted, I'll definitely give you deeper context. But the gist is, it's probably 3 years ago because, in COVID times, everything gets confusing. But I think it was 3 years ago, we wanted to take up the AP policy because Deering was doing the challenge by choice. And that was calling into question the policy because our policy states that students who take AP classes have to take the AP exam. And students at Deering were not being required to take the exam. And so people are like, what? Are they allowed to? We have a policy. So lots of questions that surfaced and bubbled up. So we worked collaboratively with the committee at the time. I'd have to look back to remember who was on it, as well as with our 3 high school principals to draft new language. We got all the way to a whole new policy. I mean, it's very short because it's basically like, do you have to take the test or not? And we got new language that essentially was, you don't have to take the test and there's these other alternatives. And in addition to, if you're going to take the test, we would support it financially for students that needed that. And so it's like you could choose instead to take an old release exam and have it count in your grade, or you could pick, I forgot the name of the other test, it's escaping me right now. It's a different test that has utility in terms of community college, I think.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt? For those of us who are not taking AP classes in high schools, can you just explain what the test is?
Yeah, it's basically let's say you took AP history, then you take from College Board and AP, you take their test, the AP test, and it's aligned to the curriculum and what they expect you to learn and know from having taken an AP advanced placement course. So it's, supposed to be a more rigorous set of standards and expectations. And then, you get a score. And traditionally, colleges have looked at those scores and potentially given students credit for getting at a certain level. That, and to be completely honest, I got to re-ground myself in that, which I will before September if we talk about it then. But my recollection is that practice isn't as consistent per se these days. And also most students are getting their exam results after they've already applied and gotten to college. And so so, and we could even I could come in September, Roberto and everyone with, even a little example of what that's like. But basically, and they cost money. And so you have to pay, I'll get the price before we meet, pay money to take the test. And the state has had a deal where they've subsidized a portion of it. And then we've been in different places as a district as to whether or not we've covered the rest or not for students. But we did agree that, we shouldn't have that as a barrier. But then there's the whole other issue of like being the student that has to ask, to get the money, to pay, all of that kind of stuff that comes with those kinds of setups. So basically, we loosened the policy, and the spirit behind that was to not have that be a barrier for students who wanted to get into these more rigorous classes, and to not have teachers feel that pressure themselves that, oh, I don't know if I want to let certain students in that aren't showing certain prerequisites because they're, feeling accountable to that AP exam score. So that's kind of what that was about. And then we didn't end up passing it because after it was drafted, Portland High was the school I recall having quite a bit of pushback on the revision. And so we were realizing, that could end up being like a huge pushback. There was more change management there than I think we maybe had anticipated. And so then we paused it, and then it just didn't get picked back up. But now I think all three high schools are ready to revisit it. And Casco and Deering are already operating in the spirit of the new revised language, because it was a little confusing that we did all this work, but then it just didn't get formally adopted. And then in terms of why here, so I always, and you might be partially just teeing me up for this, Roberto, but, the curriculum committee is interesting. Not all districts have a curriculum committee because the work of the board is, hiring and supervising the superintendent, budget, and policy. So our work is obviously not about hiring and managing Javier, it's budget and policy. So any work we would be doing, because it's your job isn't to manage academics. That's my job. Even though I know a lot of people like to have opinions about how I should do my job, not you all. But so our work should by and large be policy that might fit within the sort of broader curriculum or teaching and learning realm. Obviously resource investment as it pertains to our teaching and learning goals. And I think progress monitoring, right? That's the sort of piece that's connected to the superintendent around the priorities we've adopted in this realm. So, that's where you see policies come through this committee because, that's board work. And we just try to figure out, okay, which ones could fit here.
Can I just jump quickly? What you just mentioned on different layer, what is here in curriculum? Because I didn't hear about hold on. Let me pause. The way our student can access those,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those opportunities. The thing is happening is that is a lot of requirement and condition put there. Because when I just mentioned then, the thing that I want to see us discussing that a little more deeper is not only if about the exit tests exam, then the student need to take at the end before going to college. But is that are we making those AP available for most of the students? I think because Deering is by choice and Portland High School is totally different requirement. I don't think so is the fairness going on. And it's not about equity going to the AP opportunities. So I think something that we need to pay attention to, or we for the different layer, because that's the way we getting more access to a better teaching and curriculum approach, how to prepare our students for high achievement in college. It worked for my children, and I see that. And I see that they had those opportunities because they went to Deering. And we have to be able to talk about it before, during those AP policy opportunity among us to see what we're dealing with this, because is a lot of that I have learned from the past are the lack of accessibility for most of the students. Yeah. Especially on some high schools. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that helps. And I know Lindsay's taking notes, so it makes me think one thing I could bring when we do talk about the policy is some of the data about how many students take AP courses and what are the demographics. When we did the bar research, they looked at that. And so the reason why we were doing this policy is because it was believed that it was a part of a barrier to more students accessing rigorous coursework. So it's not so much just about the test as much as it is, how do we remove barriers so that more students have the opportunity to access our most rigorous courses? And so that's exactly what it's about, Mickey.
Yes.
And, you know, this year, Deering was doing a pilot where all students are going to take, I want to call it human geography, but I got to check myself, an AP course at Deering. And so I can bring some of that perspective when we talk about this as well. Like I mentioned, the policy is actually quite simple and basic, but it's being addressed because of the larger issue, which is the issue you're raising, Mickey.
All right. Thank you.
The rest of the list looks good to me. So I think the conversation around the AP policy is going to be really interesting. Let me see the rest of the list. The pre-K. Yeah. The only other thing that I wanted to talk about, and I don't know if this is anywhere near coming up to the committee, but I understand that there's some discussions about having a financial literacy class for our high school for one of, I don't know what grade level, but do you know, Malia, what the thought is behind putting something like that together?
Yeah, I mean, we could maybe touch base on that in November because that's part of the, so it's always sort of funny. That's part of the social studies standards. I love when Fiona talks about it. She's so funny about it. She's like, social studies, it's like all the stuff that nobody else knew. I mean, it's like the most important stuff. But in any case, so it's actually in our social studies vision and the work that's happening there. So when we talk instructional visions and stuff, Lindsay, if you can just make a note that we do like a little call out update on that body of work, that's where we could talk about that, Roberto.
Excellent. Yeah, that'd be really good. And Fiona did, I can't remember where we mentioned it, but she shared with me that she was working on this, which again, I was excited about. The final thing that I did have in mind that's not on the list. We've had discussions on and off over the years, at least I've had them with the superintendent, about the Spanish immersion program at Lycett and what the district's thought is behind either expanding that or thoughts about dual language. And I don't necessarily have a strong thought behind it, but of course we've heard over the years different sentiments about not just the Lycett program, but the idea of how dual language instruction works. I know that I've talked to Carlos about it in the past, but again, since we have new board members, and it is one of these conversations that sort of kind of always comes up, perhaps there's something there that the curriculum committee could also touch on. And I'm not aware if there's anything already in terms of looking at that program that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, Adam brought that up and, you know, as a good committee chair, was aware of you as a committee member having that as a priority interest. So we did talk about that. And so what I had said to Adam, obviously, Adam, you can speak for yourself here in a minute, but is that we are, there's two places where we're looking at that work this year. Number one, we're launching a language vertical team. So you know how we and so we just need to get more grounded on. We've talked about multilingualism is a key value proposition in our district, but I think Carlos has done a great job of elevating. Like, we need to get our arms around like, where is that fit in this picture? You know, we removed elementary language. We've had some consolidation in middle. You know, like, we just need to get aligned around that vision, because, you know, he and I have talked about his aspiration for, you know, a very high percent of our students graduating with the seal of biliteracy. And I think that sets our district apart in our state. And I think is a huge value proposition for students long-term. And so that's one place. And then the second place is that we're going to be taking up the portrait of a graduate work. So that's where we're going to be defining, you know, what do we actually mean by prepared and empowered? And then eventually we'll have an 8th and 5th grade portrait of a graduate. So then what does that look like in 8th grade in order to be prepared and empowered to get into high school and graduate the way, with the kind of skills, competencies, and mindsets we're hoping to build in students. And so language will come up there. And so what I told Adam is that I don't think this fall is the right timing for the committee to have that conversation. I absolutely think that could make sense that we touch in on that more like in the second half of this year. I just think in terms of where the work's at, it's too premature for this committee to engage in a super meaningful way in September, October, November, December. So that's why it doesn't live here, but that's sort of the work that's underway. And Adam, feel free to chime in if you feel like I didn't totally characterize our conversation correctly.
I can't. I guess Adam gave a thumbs up. Okay. So thank you. I
gave myself a thumbs up.
Oh, okay. Nice. I appreciate that, and I'm fine with that. I really like the way I just wanted to underscore this. We, I think, do a good job. You just did a good job at that balance between, keeping people informed, but also having information ready to be presented for the body that you're presenting it to, right? Like, you don't want us to be there at this level at the very beginning of any discussion, because we will just ruin it. So you want to I just think that what you just said is really important for the board to understand, because often we get anxious about, I want to know what's going on. But we also want to make sure that the information is ready for us to digest as board members, given the role that we play in the organization. So what you just said, I think, is a really good way for us to relearn that lesson. So I'm okay with that. And I love, by the way, Carlos can count on my 100% support on getting that, whatever goal he sets for the Seal of Biliteracy Award for our graduates. I think if he sets us on a path that he says will improve that number or will increase the number of Seal of Biliteracy Awards, he can count on my support. He knows that I think I'm so proud that he brought that here and what we've done, and now that the state of Maine awards it. So love it. Yeah.
I will tell him that, and that will mean a lot, because it's a professional and personal passion and value for him that I'm personally very inspired by. And I just, one other thing here, and then we can move on. But I do think also it'll be, when we get into it, like, okay, so if this is the vision and this is the portrait of a grad, I mean, it does raise some really interesting questions back to the immersion program, because our LISEF program was actually developed with the purpose of retaining, I think it's not representative of our student body. And I'm not sure it was like designed with that intention. And so it's just raised some really interesting questions for us in terms of how we've designed that vis-a-vis our values and goals as a district. And then these other opportunities that are coming up for, bilingual education or just dual immersion and all those kinds of opportunities. So we have a lot of opportunity, but we want to get grounded in like the big picture in order to figure out the path, because there's lots of ideas, but it just feels like we want to have an intentionality behind it. So cool. Anything else?
If everybody else is good, I'll just comment. One, you represented everything very well, Malia, and Roberto, you spoke to things in a very timely fashion, in part because of what happened in our conversation. Malia and I's conversation was twofold. I think one, what you mentioned about when the board gets involved is really important, and just, I don't know if anybody cares, but it's up for me, so I'll just share it. Like, I got a graduate degree in education over a decade ago, and there's a certain idealism that comes with that. And I also worked with, leaders in dual language immersion programs on the West Coast as my professors and mentors at that time. So like, this is stuff I'm up for, and I've been up for a long time. I'm like, let's do it, let's get there. And Malia was really good in regrounding me. And what else you said, Roberto, just reminding us of like what we already put in motion, what it takes to get that implemented, and just kind of getting a pacing down, which was a good tempering conversation for me, and I appreciated it. So I appreciate you bringing that up as well as the other items, and I appreciate Malia's sage advice on like setting realistic expectations and helping us be part of the district's success. So the only thing I would say that hasn't been mentioned so far in getting us into our next step, any one of these things might be very meaty conversations, but in particular, this November conversation is seeming like very thick. And last time we got this kind of flyover overview, it was a lot, very fast. And I know we didn't get in as far as we wanted to. Again, whether it's appropriate for the board to get in as far as we may want to is a different story. But I would just posit that perhaps we need to think about the November meeting being a slightly longer one than the 90 minutes that we typically have, just to give us a more comfortable pace of conversation, exploration, and all the things that are stacking up in that agenda. Otherwise, I think we're in really good shape, and I think this is really good.
That's a good point. And the other thought I'm having is, we have December as spillover. So I'm also wondering how to maybe think of that as a 2-part series. And then, because I would love for you all to, for example, we could have, Fiona, Brooke, our math team, anybody could take a whole meeting with you all. So we hope to have some evidence of sort of progress by then, but that could be another thought. Like I'm personally open to the longer November, but also thinking about a 2-part series, and I could work with our curriculum team on how to map that out. I'm so excited to tell you, I'm going on Wednesday to the launch of the 3rd grade water protectors unit. And it's just, I'll just quickly say this, but it's just, so we're starting. And some of it might get messed up with logistics or whatever, but the intention is we start in our sit spot. So there's this incredible integration of our outdoor learning work and stuff Katie West is bringing us. And you sit and you kind of observe what's around you. And what's cool about a sit spot when you're working with kids is I love it because I connect to it from a mindfulness practice perspective, because I do a lot of meditation and mindfulness and this idea of presence, right? Like if you have your sit spot in nature, and you come back to it, you start to see all of these things that you never notice. You're just ramming through, and just this more visceral experience of how you exist within nature, which is part of trying to help build an understanding of Indigenous culture, which is super hard for, people who aren't a part of that culture to get. For me, it's taken me years of sitting and listening with Indigenous leaders in our state to begin to get it. And I know I don't fully get it. But that idea of being a part of the land, not a steward of it, it's a different thing. So we start our teachers that way. James Francis is coming as a keynote to sort of launch the work. I think he's Penobscot, if I believe I'm correct on that. And then we get into sort of framing of the work, and then half the group will go on a paddle and half the group goes on a bus ride where we're looking at the dams. And it's all sort of trying to launch this unit where students are really grappling with, what it means to be a water protector, and all the scientific concepts of the dams and the implications in the socio-political context. And the phenomena is about this fish trying to get up a fish ladder. And, in the end, they raise the salmon and they release them. And it has all the things. And it's just, it's so cool. It's amazing. So I'm so excited to talk with you all about how that's going, along with, so many other pieces. So I guess I'll stop talking, but you're right, Adam. I think we could talk for a day about all of that stuff. And I think, I'm just feeling really proud and excited about the potential, where we're at, where it's going. So, okay, but on to practical matters like meeting dates. Should we do that? I'm going to stop sharing because as we talk about this, I don't want to have my email up and bother you with the crazy calendar I have. And Lindsay, I'm glad you're here, but let's look at our calendars. I think, Adam, can you help me? Did we usually do the second week of the month? I can't quite remember.
Yeah, we had used the second Tuesdays, which was an off week from the usual business meeting, as a time for our committee.
So why don't we just start with that as the opening proposal? And then if folks can look, does that work for people?
So it'd start on September 14th, October 12th, and so forth. It works for me.
I'm seeing one conflict on November 9th. I see a business meeting on there. Do we have a board meeting on the 9th, Lindsay? Do you know? Or would it be the 16th? Well, there's a board meeting on the 16th too.
Is there a conflict with the 2nd for the business meeting for some reason?
Sorry, I was talking and I'm muted. So the reason is that November 2nd is election day, and the board traditionally does not have meetings on election day. So that was moved probably to the 9th. So that I would assume that that's the day. But then the 16th is our usual board meeting because it's the third Tuesday of the month. So that's why you have them back to back. So your free Tuesdays will be 23rd, 23rd and 30th, excuse me.
23rd, I don't love. That's Thanksgiving week.
There's a policy committee also.
But the 30th, I could do the third. I'd rather do later, like the 30th, than too early, as I think about having meaningful evidence of progress for you all.
Yeah, doing November 30th and then December 14th. Seems reasonable on my calendar.
That works for me.
I'd be hesitant to schedule December because there'll be the committee assignments will be different by then. Because early December, we have inauguration, and then the first meeting of December for the board is where the new chair election takes place, and then committee assignments with any new board members are done after that. So I wouldn't, if you anticipate any changes, I would just plan on that when you schedule December.
I mean, could we just put it as the 14th, and then that at least we have the date, and then if it becomes a challenge for new folks, we'll adjust. That would help me in terms of like preparing, because especially if the topic is part 2 of that, I'll be bringing other staff. Okay.
This all work for you, Mickey?
I need to be elected first, I think. I guess.
Well,
she's unopposed. So just put it on your calendar, you know?
Yeah, I put on my calendar. It was a joke. I get you.
Manifest it.
All right. So, yeah, it works December 14, right? Yeah, I'm good because I will travel, but I travel 2 days later, so I'm good.
Okay.
And does the November 30th? Yes.
Yes,
and then
I'm good on it. Yeah. Yes, I'm good.
Okay, did you get
I'm
that?
laughing because
Yes. So I can make sure that those are updated on the calendars.
Thank you. And then I wanted to hear why Roberto was laughing.
still laughing. I said, if I'm here, something went wrong.
Oh boy. Okay, great. So we did that. Check objective 1, check objective 2. Look at us. So, and Adam, let me turn to you for this. So we have 15 minutes left. I do have priorities and strategies. We previewed these before. I think part of what you and I had talked about was creating space to surface things like immersion and where does this work live. So I guess I just would, I don't want to like just sort of talk at you with like, here's the stuff again. So let me know if you all want to get a refresh and sort of where we're at with all the work that's humming, or if you feel like you've had that and that's not a good use of your time. I would appreciate some, transparency from you all as to what would be helpful.
Yeah, my instinct is actually putting that in that December agenda. If we're going to have a new committee, that seems like a really appropriate time to make sure we do that.
Yeah.
Anybody have a desire to get into that right now, or just let it be?
No.
Yeah.
What you just said, that make more sense. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And it's stuff I've shared with you before. Just it's, reminding you all about the focus on core instruction and materials and equitable practices, safe and equitable schools, restorative, de-escalation, PBIS, all those things. So, okay. Wonderful. Well, reach out if you have questions about that stuff. And I gave you the PowerPoint, Adam. So if there's stuff in there you think the committee would like to see, just share it away. But otherwise, should we do meeting minutes? I think you said we wanted to do that at the end.
Yeah, I had missed that. So just looking for a motion to approve the meeting minutes of the June 8th Curriculum and Ed Planning Committee meeting. Any motion?
So moved.
A second.
Thank you. Any questions on the motion? There's nobody here other than us. So no public comment. Any discussion? And if you approve the minutes, would you indicate with your hand up? Okay, that's unanimous. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Well, then I'll leave it to you to close us out, Adam. But before you do that, just thanks for the thoughtful dialogue and feedback and support. And I'm excited about these topics and working on them in collaboration with you all.
Yeah, thanks, Malia. Thanks again for your partnership on this, taking us through what we just laid out. Look forward to that. And thanks, everybody, for the affirmation of a good process and conversation today, as well as the good discussion. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
I'll second.
Seconded by Member Bondo. And all in favor? There we go. We're adjourned. All right.